Hello, and welcome to the second interview that we have with Hannah. And Hannah, it's been about 3 months ago that we had the last talk, and lots of stuff has happened. So I think if you just start telling us how has the last 3 months been?
Yeah. Um, Great. Well, just side note, I'm getting a little bit of a cold, so apologies for that. I am gonna start with the experience of watching the last interview. I think that will really help highlight. There were other things that happened in those three months, but it kind of all blurs together. So in advance of doing this interview, Todd and Pernilla, no, Pernil, I'm sorry. I know it's Pernil, right? Not
No,
Pernilla.
it's fine. It's
Actually,
fine.
Pernilla.
Vanilla is fine. I'm
Okay.
not that attached to a right pronunciation, so it's fine.
Okay. Um, so in advance of this conversation, they allowed me to watch the first interview that we had done, and that ended up being a surprisingly cataclysmic experience. For some reason, that's the word that comes to me. That it really, in an unexpected way, was sort of felt like the nails in the coffin of some sort of view that had been lingering. So um there's some context there is that from the first interview, I didn't remember like 99% of it. And the 1% that I did remember was just like a few places, but that 1% of memories had a very specific like viewpoint to it, a very specific like interpretation. And then going into watching the recording, I also had these subtle thoughts about what the experience of watching myself would be like. And then it turns out that watching the video just like decimated all of those memories and thoughts, and really showed me honestly just like how bullshit that whatever that lingering perspective was. Because one, in watching the video, I didn't feel like any attachment to it. Like it was like watching someone else's conversation. um like there was no embarrassment or judgment, but there was also no like sense of pride or accomplishment. So totally like blew out of the water whatever my mind thought that experience was going to be like. And then also in watching the video, it was just so clear to me that like that was already it. Like this has always already been it. All of this is it.
Mm.
And that whatever those lingering like memories or perspectives were just they were just wrong. Like there was just nothing about them that captured the reality of that conversation, or um just what this is. And so I don't know, it really felt like I said the nails in the coffin of like, wow, you've really seen how this viewpoint or perspective, it doesn't offer you any benefits.
Mm.
And it also like really then opened that door of I don't know, just this sense of like coming full circle, and like really seeing that everything is all already this. And um the surprising thing that then came out of it, was how then my experience started to change from a sense of emptiness being primary to like a sense of everything and nothing.
Mm.
I don't I don't quite know how to describe it, but I guess before I do that, with the whole video experience, I think that that's where that could be an exercise that could benefit other people, as like you record yourself and then see afterwards what are the memories or thoughts, and what are the story that they're telling you, how did they interpret it, and then give it a couple months and write down like what you think it's going to be like to watch yourself, and then, well, hopefully the experience of doing so will either reveal to you places where there are identification, or just reveal to you how false those perspectives are.
Yeah, no,
Um,
that's amazing.
And it's a
Yeah,
great
it's
exercise.
really,
It's
really good,
also
yeah.
why I from the first get go in the first Fetter talk about writing down, journal everything, write everything down, because whatever you perceive as being important and real, and now when you read that in 5 months or 3 months or 6 months, it's a completely different experience. Like you had
Yeah,
the other
yeah.
day when you found a journal that you had
Yeah,
written.
right after my mom died, and I had forgot that I had kept like a daily mood journal of, how I felt every day. And in my memory now, it is so different than it was reading what was there. It was like completely an absolutely different experience of clearly what it was like then, but then having effectively erased and manipulated the memories of what that whole time was like and made it into something completely different.
We have
Yeah.
so inaccurate memories,
Yeah.
because our memories are not created for accuracy. They're created for survival, which means that we don't remember anything. Whatever we think we remember, that is shifting to the state that we are in at any given point. So when I think of my childhood, I think of it as a person I am today, not as how it was to be 5.
Yeah.
And there's been made amazing studies with that as well, that I'm talking about in the 10th Fetter lessons, where people are writing down, for example, after 9/11, where they were, when they heard about it and how it was experienced. And then years later, they were asked the same thing, and they had a completely different account about where they were and how it was experienced. And they believed that how they felt now, that was the right thing,
Yeah.
even though they had written it down the day after. So our memories are not accurate at all. We keep clicking reboot, so we believe that the way we are right now is the way that we were. So it is super important, like you say, to like write down. Or I love the idea of a video, because it is different. You can see so many things in a video, especially if you're sitting and recording yourself, as a journal, diary thing, where you're recording yourself, because your mannerisms, the things that you think about, the things you reflect about, and the voice, and you can pick up on so much in a video. So I love that idea.
Did you
yeah,
find
the video for me almost was like this is solid proof that what your mind was telling you what was wrong. Like
Yeah.
you can see it on screen and watch and see that that interpretation was just, yeah, false. Sorry, Todd, were you going to say
yeah, well,
something?
I was just gonna ask more detail on that. Was there something specific in that video that was like really for you, something where you really recognized all of a sudden, oh, that is a big thing that I is not the way I thought it was. Was there like one or two just really jarring aspects?
Yeah, there were just so there were a few places where like you had asked either of you had asked something and my mind couldn't come up with an answer. So one of them was like talking about the fifth floor, and one of them was about like politics. And so basically it was like my mind only recorded those moments when there not like nothing came out. And so then that interpretation of the experience was, it just discolored the whole experience, because it
Mhm.
was only remembering these places that felt like um yeah, I don't know. It just overshadowed everything else. And so then actually watching it and being like, that was totally normal. That's not a
Yeah.
big deal. Like you can't make thoughts, come when you want them to. Like it just was, yeah, it was
Yeah.
just so there was no issue. And it like for me, at least now, it feels like memory only records when there's like some sort of perceived issue.
Yeah,
Otherwise,
Yeah.
there's just like no
yeah.
memory of things.
I also love the idea, like you talked about before, that with the recording, that also notice all the thoughts that you have from making the recording until you watch it next time. Because, like you say, there's so many things that we are delusional about, that we believe that, oh, and it was about that, and it was about that, and it was about that. So partly notice when you then watch the video the differences, the discrepancies that is in that, but also notice, where does that come back to? Who is the one that needs to be like defended, or needs to do better, or needs to, oh, I should have thought of it right away, or where is that mirroring into? Where does that um reflection go into, and where does that come from? Because it's just a pattern. It's a pattern that is repeated in a copy paste fashion all over our lives. So it might just be we discover something in a recording, or the thoughts about the recording, but that pattern of I should have thought of it right away, that one, that is copy pasted all over our lives, like then we go to work and drop the kids off, and we forgot, uh, their gym bag, or oh, I should have thought of that. Or it's smeared all over the thing, all over our lives. And becoming aware between making the recording and watching the recording, becoming aware of that pattern is really useful as well.
Mhm. Absolutely.
You teed that up so nicely because one of the things that I did see over the past few months was this pattern in the body, and then it would spur up thoughts of just like this perception of making a mistake, and how there still was this sense of it's not okay to make mistakes, but it had become very, very subtle. And for me, it was actually this like sensation in my back, which it sounds so strange, but it was like this tickling in my back that I suppose maybe would have been from a lifetime of like, sort of hunching or flinching. But then I started to notice over the past couple of months that when there would be that sensation, the mind would start looking for where I had made a mistake.
Mm.
Yeah.
And then once I saw that, I've spent time just like sitting and just like saying to myself, like, I made a mistake, and just like being with whatever that felt like in the body, and just starting to grow comfortable with that. And then also there's the whole piece of that there are no mistakes. You're not in control of what's happening, but it really needed to be that like, yeah, feeling it in the body.
Yeah, I love that.
Right.
And you're actually pointing at something really important, that even though um all feather has fallen, and even though we're in a place where there's no attachment anymore, we still have a physical meat suit, and we still have all of those causes and conditions. So for example, for you, in you growing up, and your entire pattern as developed as a person, you have that pattern that the worst thing that can happen is you making a mistake, and you need to do
Mhm.
everything in your power not excuse me, not to make a mistake. So what happens in the curriculum is that we're slowing down. So whenever you have a sensory experience in your body, notice that that is just a sensory experience. It usually triggers, a thought that creates another sensory experience, and then the feedback loop is just running rampant. but we can slow down and notice, like Todd he's pointing out with Errol a lot of times, that there is a sensory experience, and that is basically it.
Hmm.
There's nothing more than that. This sensory experience is not connected to a thought, because this sensory experience in another human being would create another thought. So those two are not correlated in any way. So we can pick it apart, and we can notice that that feedback loop that is happening, it's just causes and conditions.
Hmm.
If any we had any other causes and conditions, that tension in the back would not be correlated with thoughts about making a mistake. That is a you thing. It's only
Mhm.
happening in you, and that is where it can't be real. It cannot be a real thing. Also, you also know, when like you just said, that making a mistake, there is no such thing. You cannot make a mistake. There is an arising happening, and then a label is added onto it saying this could have been done differently, which means this is a mistake. But that is a complete delusion. Again, that is just happening in mental formations. It doesn't take up any space. It's not real at all in any way. It is just an action that happened and a judgment attached to that action that makes it into a mistake. For another person, that would be an absolute victory to do that. So again, if it's different for another person, it can't be truth. It can't be real. And it's not taking up any space at all. That's another way of seeing that it can't be real at all.
It's so, like, with everything with you're saying, what was so interesting for me was like seeing how far the mind would go in trying to place it, because I think the first time I really noticed it, because it was so subtle, I was like laying down in bed, and it could have been my back felt weird for who knows what reason, but then it was like the mind was like trying to replay like days of stuff to figure out where the mistake was made, and just how nuts that is, that it was so far removed from anything that had actually happened. um but I know for me, this used to be huge. Like, I feel like pre the past couple of years of working on of awakening, or however we want to say it, it's like I was so afraid of making mistakes that it's like I had this like hyper vigilant, like almost it felt like forcing my mind to record everything so that I
Mm,
could
Yeah.
prove to myself later that I hadn't made a mistake or done anything wrong. I mean, which is really crazy,
mm,
but it's how I used to operate. And like, if I didn't have a like good memory of a particular interaction, then I would just have this sense of like, I made a mistake, I must have said something wrong, and I would, have shame. Um, and just all because of like sensations in the body that had nothing to do with anything.
yeah,
Completely.
yeah.
Um, One other thing this just reminded me of, if it's not taking us too far down the wrong
Yeah.
direction, but
No such thing.
it's something I wanted to share it anyways, with just like hindsight being 2020, I guess. w- so much when we talk about like emotion or emotional centers, people talk about the head, heart, and gut. And I feel like I spent years like really trying to like find where those, like people would direct you to look in those places, and I would be looking there and there wouldn't be anything there. And it took me way too long to realize that for me, it really is like the backside of my body that feels like where the emotional centers are. And I had just like ignored it for so long, because whatever the sensations in my neck or my upper back or traveling up my spine, I just didn't see the ways in which those were associated with certain reactions and emotions. So I guess just a warning of always taking what you hear very, very lightly, and also my brain is just super hyper literal. So if someone says like in your gut, then I'm like looking in my gut and
Yeah.
not paying attention to the other spaces. So if folks haven't been, paying attention to the backside of their body, I highly recommend doing so.
Such
I absolutely love that, because it is we can very, and you're not the first one who has said that, we can very easily stare ourselves blind on where we are supposed to feel it, where we are supposed to feel a release. When you relax, feel how your back is relaxing, feel how your body is relaxing, but it might not be where it works for that specific person. You might only feel super relaxed when your facial muscles are relaxing. That's when it hits. Or when you release a very slight tension in your foot. That is when it's happening. And that is different from all of us, because we have different meat suits, all of us, and we have different muscular tension in different spaces. We feel, for example, relaxation differently. We feel fear and anger and all of that differently. And having the same mold for everyone, it's not how it fits. It's why I love the embodiment exercises that we do, where it's just like really loosening up everything, because you are moved to releasing exactly where the tension is in your body. So I love you pointing that out. Thank you.
Yes. Well, thank you for all the embodiment exercises. And I'm excited for the new things that are coming next year that you've talked about.
Yeah.
us too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, yes.
So, well, you had a lot of things from the last interview that afterwards you had wanted to say or thought you should have said. Do you still feel like they're relevant after having watched it? And if so, is there something else, like you had a list of things, but I don't know if they're still applicable.
Yes. Do you, I'm looking over here because I actually did
Yeah,
write things
sure.
down. Do you want me to do that now or talk about the email that I sent
Yeah.
recently? It
Let-
doesn't matter.
yeah, I would say let's go with the earlier stuff first, and then maybe that will work
Okay.
through again to the newest email, if that makes sense for you, if that seems comfortable.
Yeah,
Yes.
I say in whichever sequence that makes you, you know, just flow.
Yeah, let me talk about the email then, actually, because it did really change things that I feel like talking about
Yeah.
today. So, after watching that video and really seeing how the memories and the viewpoints and perceptions were wrong, and then I don't know, it's so hard to explain because it just feels like so normal now. But it was, for whatever reason, that like sense of seeing that, okay, that conversation, what was all already it, like this is everything is already it. It was, I don't know, some sort of integration, whereas the last time we spoke, and for over those 3 months, like the primary thing in my experience was that, and like I also realized these words are very scary for some people. So I just want to like set that stage that some of these things are going to sound triggering. Um, but it really was like the sense of emptiness or being no thing, but it wasn't bad. But like I'm trying to think of an actual example. Like in meditation, like listening to a guided meditation from, say, some of yours, Todd's, like it was just so clear that there there was no me. There was just a reaction to whatever sound was in the meditation. Like there was no Todd, there was no Todd who created the meditation. There was just this arising of the meditation and the response in the body. And seeing similar things like that, just like in my daily life, like interacting with my kids, and just I just felt like this sense of empty. Makes it sound bad, but it's not, because it was wonderful, because being empty was like seeing everything with fresh eyes. Like there was no um emotional like baggage. So like when my daughter was being challenging, I wasn't bringing these like frustrations of how it should be and I want it to be different and this always happens. It was just the like compassionate reaction would just arise out of emptiness in response to her behavior. And it was just so easy and simple. And um so yeah, that sense of like being nothing or emptiness or no self. I know all those words have meaning, so I might not be using them correctly, but yeah. So then watching the video and seeing how everything was already it just felt like this coming full circle, and then being both everything and nothing.
Mm.
But not everything in the way that the mind thought being everything would feel like, because it's not like there is a me who is now one with that lamp over there. It's that it just feels like everything is one thing, one movement of life. And it does, I understand now why people say it has an impersonal quality, because
Mm.
it's like I feel just, just as much when you're talking, feel just as much like this is the same one thing as when I'm talking. And
Yeah.
Yeah.
those are things I'd experienced in meditation, but not so much around other people or around my family. And now it's just like I don't know, it just feels like there's one energy that will like move through the family. And I can see how everyone's, reaction is exactly what needs to happen. It's the only thing that could happen in the moment, even if there are things that in the past would have, made me feel frustrated or worried. It's just like this is so clearly everything is just moving as one thing in the way that it needs to be. And somehow it is all me and also not me.
Yeah.
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 Yeah, I love it.
Yeah.
I love it. A thing that I think always to me helps clarify it is that in Taoism they talk about the 10,000 things. And whenever they mention 10,000 things, it's everything that has a concept. So there is the Tao, which is unspoken, you can't talk about it, which is what you just tried, which is utterly impossible because the moment we put a word into it, a concept is created, and that makes it
Yes.
part of the 10,000 things. So what you're talking about is beyond concepts. When you say that sitting with the family and whatever is happening and arising, it's just a movement of energy that is happening, and that energy is everything and nothing at the same time. So it's not the 10,000 things we're talking about. We're talking about something else, so beyond concepts. And that is where it's difficult to put word to, because a word creates a concept. So when you say that whatever is arising in the family, it's like causes and conditions. A kid is like feels frustrated because she's tired. She knocks over a glass of water on the table and it spills, and everybody stands up and try to move things and dry up. And the other child now starts to cry because she got startled by the water tipping over. All of that movement that is happening, where it's like dominoes. There's like one thing, the movement of energy, it, like this is that becomes, it's just
Mm.
like vroom, vroom, vroom that is happening. And we
Yes.
can't have an opinion about the child being tired or the water tipping over or drying or the other child being startled. We can't have an opinion of any of it because it is just a movement, and one thing is giving the next.
Yeah.
And that is exactly that. That is where what is arising is what is arising, and there's no opinion about it being wrong or could be in any other way, because that is not possible. And it's back to what we also often talk about. Then for that to be any different, we even need to look at who made that glass, tippable.
Yeah.
Who put the glass right there? Who created that person that put the glass right there? We need to look at everything back to the dinosaurs of how this situation could have been any different, which it clearly couldn't. So yeah.
Yeah. And I wanted to say, I love that you brought up things which are sticking points for a lot of people, because we have these expectations when we hear words like emptiness and oneness. There are so many different connotations to those words, and because of the context that we use them in is so different from the ways that we kind of colloquially use them. So I think the reason that the idea of like emptiness becomes scary for people is because they feel like that means that there's literally something missing now. Something that
Mm,
was here is being stripped away, and now maybe it's just like a black void. Like there's just nothing here. And like so beautifully we're explaining, it's not that there's nothing there. You're still, your kids are still there. The room is still there. Everything was still there that was there, except this extra layer of belief in something being identified and needing things to be a way different than they are, and something that is separate from everything else. And so that emptiness, the way that we use that word, just means it's lacking any inherent existence, which points back to your everything is just this, the totality, just the Tao, just
mm,
the all. And but even like the idea of like oneness, that where you said like it's not like me looking, I am the lamp and all of that. It's because when we hear these things earlier on in the awakening process, we're coming at them from the viewpoint of this perspective, which is the only thing we've ever been able to use to orient ourselves in the world. Everything has that fundamental basis of identification. So when we hear unification or oneness or everything is that, of course, that is believed to still exist. Like that's got to go someplace. So if that's the way that I'm used to experiencing all of the world, we just imagine that that is going to be what it means to be one with everything. It's just going to feel like me, just really, really big. And, I get to feel what it's like to be a horse and a cloud and everything else. And that the actuality of it is so much more mundane
mm.
and so much more simple than that. And it's
Yes.
just that
Yes.
nugget of identification is just gone. And then there is just a cloud appearing and a horse appearing and a lamp. And there's nothing in the center of any of that. It's just simply one, as you said, this energy moving through, just arising, passing, new things showing up, other things showing up, and it's just a flow where everything is.
Mm,
Yeah,
beautiful.
I
yeah,
read I read the Tao after our last conversation. It was
nice.
the first time I read it, but I read it because Pernilla, you've mentioned it in a few places. It was really powerful
Yeah,
and really helpful.
yeah,
Um
yeah, yeah. I love the Tao.
Yeah.
It turned out to be one of the things that we had in common, having a huge amount of different editions of the
Yeah,
Tao.
we both have multiple translations of Tao. We both the Tao Te Ching was like both of our one of our
His
favorite
favorite
books,
books
and every translation of it is like
is different.
completely different, and it's fascinating to read that one is like from like a very political place, and one is much more non-dual, and another one is has a different point of reference, because everybody who translates it filters it through their own biases and expectations and scholarly
Yeah.
assumptions and all of that. And so it's fascinating to read the same thing
So
through all these different.
so we had a lot of editions, publications of the Tao, both of us. Now we have a huge amount since we moved in together. But yeah,
I will need to check out some other editions then, because I only read one.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah. It can be a really interesting experience to read a few different side by side.
I can actually, if you are up for it, I think I can recommend you to read on our homepage, the Awakening Curriculum. If you go to Suttas, we recommend, there is one that is called the 37 Practices of the Bodhisattva. And it's 37 small verses. And I can recommend you to read them, because now, when all the fetters have fallen, they are really useful in seeing different angles of the awakening process and where we are.
yeah,
I can only
that
recommend that.
sounds great.
Yeah,
Thank you.
yeah.
Um,
And it's a shame. I was trying to remember the author of the translator of our current favorite version
Now,
of
yeah,
the Tao Te
I can't
Ching.
remember his name.
I think it's Steven something, but yeah, I can't remember offhand. I can picture the book and I can't think of
yeah,
his name.
we can write the
well, maybe post about it on Discord
yeah,
or something
yeah,
later.
yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
And we'll put it in the
In the comment,
yeah,
in the description
description of
of
this
the video.
video when it comes out for people in
Yeah,
case they're also
if
interested.
interested in our
Yeah.
current favorite Tao.
Yeah.
I'm gonna jump back in if
Yes.
that's
Please do.
okay.
Please do.
Before I lose this thought, which is when all of this clicked in to place, it was sort of like the scope of everything changed so much. And I think maybe it's that, like, the impersonal quality. I don't know how else to describe it, but it felt like a sigh of relief, of a chapter closing, but then now seeing that, like, the real stuff starts in some way, but it's it just, but it feels very, very different.
Mm.
We'll see how if I could articulate that better, but it's not,
Yeah, it's
there's
that
not that.
it's that everything is different, but nothing has changed.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. I think, okay. This is what I was trying to go with. Around the same time, well, so the past few months, whatever sort of experience state I was in, it was like, it's like I totally could kind of like lost sight of what it's like to be mind I identified, because I can't put myself back in that place in the same way. And it would just sort of felt so normal that it was just sort of like, well, everyone is already this. And so I sort of like lost sight of what, I'm just going to use the word ego, of what ego is really like. And so it's part of all of this. There's now like a different understanding and appreciation of the ego. And um it's it's still pretty weird in that, like, this just feels so normal to me that it's hard to believe that for some people this sounds like crazy nonsense or like scary, threatening stuff. But it was like important to come back and like have that realization of what it is like for other people. And it's not that I can tell, but just I've like seen and heard some things on, say, like Discord or YouTube or whatnot, that have pressed upon me the power and the harm of the ego, I guess.
Mm.
Yeah.
um And that is actually leads me into uh the things that I felt like I didn't say last time, because it's like last time I just like didn't I had just totally forgotten the context, I think, of what this sounds like to other people, if that makes sense.
Mhm.
So actually I'm going to take a sip of tea.
Please do.
Yeah. So am I.
Let's all drink. Cheers.
I like your nail polish, Todd. Oh, and
Thank
you
you.
too, Ferdil.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, getting
Um,
back into wearing it again.
so the first thing that like really came to me after our last conversation, and then was sort of reinforced again after some things I've seen lately, is um wanting to take a moment to talk about what this is and what this is not.
Mm,
And um also in the context of like, I'm a very normal person, right? Like, I drive a minivan, I have kids, I work full time. Like,
uh,
I've never been on a real retreat. Like, I don't really talk about this stuff in my day-to-day life. So like, I have no skin in the game. I'm not trying to like sell anything or convince anyone of anything. Um, but there's just, I think, a lot of misconceptions and then fear around some of these things. And a few years ago, so when I was sort of in the worst of the worst, that state was very much like a disassociated functional freeze robotic state of, there was so much like trauma and grief that I didn't have the capacity to deal with.
Mm.
I had infant twins, and it was COVID, and it was like I was just so shut down, other than like a machine that only existed to like be the best possible parent.
mm,
And um that is not what emptiness and no self is. When I was in that state, and what sort of led me to mindfulness in the first place, was just all that I wanted was to be like fully present and engaged in life. Like, I could feel some sort of separation and distance. I didn't know what it was. And so I wasn't like seeking anything big, other than just to really fully be in my life, and to be emotionally open and available, and to be able to like appreciate and enjoy the simple pleasures in life, like the way that you do when you're a kid, and wanting to be able to be that way with my kids, to like share in those things with them. And like, this now is like truly the answer to all those prayers.
Yeah.
And it like starts to make me feel a little bit uh emotional, because I mean, for me now, it's so easy to lose sight of what that was like, because it just doesn't feel real anymore. But for yeah, I think for people who are hearing these things and have some fear around it, or maybe they have a misunderstanding of what we're talking about, I just really wanted to share that, because I keep seeing some things where people are talking about some of this stuff as if it is a robotic disassociated state. And as someone who has been there, I can really, really assure you that it is not. It is not that. It is the opposite of that, in fact.
Yeah.
yeah,
Love
Um,
that. Yeah.
yeah.
Thank you.
and Yeah. So I say that not to give someone a goal, because this is already in everyone's experience. Like,
Mhm.
whoever is watching this, I know that this is true for you too. And um so this is for the mind, and giving the mind some assurances that this is okay and this is safe. But like, it is already in everyone's experience. Like, it truly is here for everyone. Um and related to this, another thing I wanted to talk about was making sure that people are taking care of their mental health. And the part of why I love the awakening curriculum so much is because you have such a heavy emphasis on, doing the emotional work, not bypassing anything, really being with your experience. And um but I do it just like want to also encourage people to use other resources if needed. I know last time we spoke, I talked about Cheetah House and how I didn't go, but I didn't want that to sound like disparaging. Because what I did do that I forgot to mention is I had a few sessions with Stephen Bodian. I don't know if you've heard of him, but he's like a deeply realized person and a mental health professional. And he's done a lot of work in this space of mental health plus, non-duality. And so I had conversations with him where I was straight up asking in the beginning, like, is this awakening or is this a mental health crisis? And, fortunately for me, we was very reassuring. It was awakening. Um, but if anyone is having questions about that, or if there's uncertainty, even though some amount of like fear and angst and whatnot is normal, um, please do use resources like Cheetah House or other non-dual therapists, and like really take to heart what Todd and Pernilla say about like self-care
Mm.
and being really honest about where you are and what you need to take care of yourself. Because this whole process, it's not getting something new, it's taking away the things that are false, and having this mindset of I just got to keep pushing hard and going so I get it is only going to hurt you, and it's not necessary.
Mm.
Love that
Um
a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you for
Super
that too.
important. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, we're
and I know
yeah,
you all share those messages all the
But it's
time,
it's
but
it's super helpful somebody else saying it. It's
yeah,
really, really relevant because it is something, when we keep saying the same thing, same thing, same thing, when somebody comes in and say the exactly same thing, but from a completely different angle,
yeah,
it is always received differently.
yeah.
So that was really good.
Yeah, and especially, I mean, okay, so clearly we've all been there, right? We've all been forceful at times in trying to do this stuff. We've all been goal oriented and like I particularly speak from that history of being very forceful and self-deprecating and self-denying and um you know being very unskillful with my self-care in regards to wanting to do that. And I you know learn from the errors of my ways, and so like you, I think it's important to just be honest about that and to remind people that like Hannah, you had said earlier on, and it was so good that oh, is that your phone? I hear a thing going off. I think you're being called. Or is that
Um,
mine? I'm not
I
looking at
I
the
have
watch.
I have turned
Okay.
everything off.
Okay, so maybe it's mine. Okay, we'll ignore that. Sorry. Um, but you said that it was really that um, you know, everything is still there. And it's like what we talk about with that there are experiences of no body, and then there are experiences of a body, and we really do have to take care of both of them at the same time. That there is a reality where you still have kids and you're still a mom and you're still working and doing all the things that you do, and that's all happening at the same moment. Can you say more maybe about what your experience is now regarding living in both of those worlds at the same time? The emptiness and the sort of
Mhm.
fullness of.
Yeah. And I think this is something that I need to start paying attention to in a different way, which is, um, okay, I'll say this part first. Yes, that because this feels, like I said, so just like natural and just like feels so right. Um, it's like I could see everywhere, just like the cognitive dissonance everywhere. Like whether it's big things like politics or small things like day-to-day interactions, and just like remembering that um people don't want you to point that out to them. Not that I would ever point out to someone, specifically that, oh, there's some cognitive dissonance here, but it's just
I love when
it's
we
so
do
weird
that.
that
Very skillful to do that.
there's just like this, it's so weird that there's like this social contract that everyone is going to pretend like it's normal, and not only that, like it's rude to highlight it in any way. And I know that's not exactly what you were asking, but it's just, it's strange to be on, I don't know, the other side of that, and needing to be careful, I guess, around certain things.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
I had a
I just notice the compassion, because when there's a cognitive dissonance, it's always a protection that the other person they have for something. There's something that they deliberately close their eyes to because they don't know how to deal with it. So to me, when I see it, it's very easy to have compassion for the situation. And I am very much aware that I see something that they don't see, and I evoke compassion in an area that they are not even aware needs compassion.
Mhm.
So to me, in that situation, it's easy to be with, to see the cognitive dissonance and not point it out. It would be cruel to point it out because they have that cognitive dissonance as a protection. So it's, to me, it's just an act of compassion and kindness.
Mm.
that's really good. But I think for the heart of your question about what this is like is that, um like with, my kids and family, it's just, things are just so much easier. I don't know, it's just, it really is just like moment by moment. And I just relate to my kids in a different way, I guess. Well, because it's not that same, it doesn't feel like me relating to them anymore. It's just the one happening where I can really then like understand and empathize and like feel where they are coming from, and why they are acting the ways that they are. And then it's just so much easier to just have natural, compassionate responses that they just arise on their own without having all of that mind stuff, like we talked about earlier, the mind stuff of like, well, why are they always doing this? And this is what they mean, what it means if they keep doing this. And this is going to be a problem 5 years from now. And this is what it reflects on me because this is how things are going, like all of that is gone. And well, I'm not saying forever, like at least for a
Mhm.
while it has been gone. And I also, like, I don't, and again, this could change at any time, but I haven't really like experienced suffering the way that I used to in a year or more, I think. Um, and that's something I also just sort of lost sight of a bit. And even though there's been challenging things that have come up, unexpected things, illnesses in the family, deaths in the family, there's not, yeah, there's not that mental suffering, although it could come back, of course. It just, things are just so simple. They just are what they are. And like, I like what you always say, that it's like some simplicity, stillness, and contentment.
Yeah.
Like having that as a baseline makes day-to-day life so much easier and more enjoyable. And then there also is, then for me at least, more like natural enjoyment and gratitude of things that arise. Um, but it's funny because it's not like, I can see now where my past ideas of what like happiness or fun or gratitude, like for me, those things used to be so associated with like certain mental states or mental
Mm.
perceptions or um certain behaviors and actions. And that's like not at all, that's not at all what it is. It's, well, I don't know what it is, but it's not that. um uh let's see, I have a couple other things if I
Yes,
should
Yeah,
just keep
yeah.
going.
Yeah, yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
absolutely.
um so one thing that has become really clear to me in the past few months is how much I um either doubted my own experience or didn't understand my own experience because of the way that other people talk about things. And I know this is something that is said all the time. But some of the language, it just sounds so dramatic. And I know that you all do a good job of not using that dramatic language, actually, but it is very much out there. And
Yeah.
even even things like um the fear barrier or
Mm.
the void or stepping off a ledge, like there's all these things that sound really dramatic. And um Angelo released a video sometime in the past couple of months that was something about um like the one sensation that you avoid. And in this video, because I don't know if folks have seen it, but he pretty much is pointing to um you know, looking to see, is there one sensation or feeling that you are just have always avoided and you don't even realize you're avoiding it. And he has some techniques in that video that are helpful, but um it, like that video was so helpful for me in that it very much described things that I had already experienced, but I hadn't recognized them for what they were, because that language of
Mm.
stepping off the ledge and fear barrier and whatnot just didn't resonate with me. And I wanted to share this in case other folks are in the same boat. Um what this was like for me, um I didn't associate it with like a sense, like a big sense of fear. And for me, it was very much, again, sort of sensations in the back of my neck and head that I sort of had always associated them with almost like this sense of like being out of it or having brain fog but I just realized that like I've always avoided these sensations because there is this like subtle idea of if I relax into those sensations, then I'm just gonna have like brain fog and I'm gonna be out of it. I'm not gonna be able to like go about my day. Um, so because to me it just felt like such like a normal like physical health type thing, I like avoided it for so long, but also had no idea that it was even relevant.
Mm.
Mhm.
And then finally when I got to whatever point of just sort of honestly it was like I finally saw, I don't know, 6 months ago, I finally like I can remember like sitting in a rocking chair and sort of like realizing like what is it that I feel like I'm running away from right now, and just this sense of like, okay, well, what's the worst that's gonna happen? And so then just like relaxing into it, it was a kind of a strange experience at first, where it almost was sort of like, I don't know, almost like a moment of feeling like this staticky, almost brain fog type thing. But then it was just like something totally different popped out. I don't know. I don't know what it was. Um, but the whole point of this was just the don't discount things in your own experience because they don't seem big and flashy and dramatic, right? Like I think sometimes the language that people use, it's like making people look for certain
Yeah.
experiences.
Yeah.
Um, and then it's almost like you don't realize how far you've come because you're still just clinging to this like just this one thought of, well, this isn't it yet. So you're not appreciating what has actually been realized.
That is so important.
It
It's
really
so
is.
important. I have completely lost count of how many times we have spoken with people that are so convinced that they haven't experienced it yet because I'm not experiencing what they are talking about. But you can never compare. You can never ever compare because what they are talking about, it's their expression of something that you cannot put into words. So whatever way they are expressing it, that's one way. The way you hear it is only by things you have a memory about and have experienced previously that you now are shaping what they are trying to say into your experience and going, well, I haven't experienced that. So it's so far off what they actually did experience that they can't explain. You know,
Yeah.
you can easily have experienced exactly the same, but would just use different words to describe it
Yeah.
because the experience
Mhm.
was different. And it is one of the reasons why we really emphasize on being very down to earth, very, very real in our language, not having any like psychedelic, you know, wording to any of it because it's only what you would experience if you're doing shrooms.
Yeah.
Otherwise you wouldn't experience it. For everybody, normal people, it's an everyday normal experience that we
Yeah.
have, and comparing with something else is just putting us into an unfair comparison, and we're completely missing the point.
Yeah. Yeah, I just had a metaphor when you were
Oh, go
talking,
on.
but I don't think it really does much to add to that, honestly. But
Go
I'll
on.
throw it out just in case. It's like it's like if you've had like you're pretty sure that you've tried apple pie at some time in your life. and you're talking to somebody and they're like describing like the best apple pie they have ever had, and they're describing it in a way that actually makes you doubt whether you have actually had apple pie. I think I've had apple pie. Like I'm pretty sure, it was tasty and it had apples and it had some, liquid coming out of it, and it had this crunchy, flaky crust, and it was tasty. No, but this apple pie that I've had, it was like another level. It was like, made by elves in, the dark forest, and like they have these apples are just magic. They grow on these special trees, and it's like you get that idea that like, well, okay, maybe I haven't had apple pie. I don't know. Maybe this is just like something that I bought out of a vending machine, maybe it's just like a pie. So it's like that, but it's like
Yes.
we have that like ability to one up everything,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
and our minds are so
Their
adept at
apple pie
creating.
sounds so much better than my apple pie, so I probably
Exactly.
haven't had one.
No, there's something else to strive for. There's definitely a better apple pie out there, and it's in our minds. We're so good at imagining things and creating, like you said, creating based on all of the things that we have heard other people say, or all the things that we could possibly imagine. Like,
Mm,
I mean, I think a problem, not to say that reading the sutras is a problem, but I think one of the things that was most detrimental for me in that regard in my practice was hearing the kind of extreme explanations of awakening or enlightenment in the Buddhist doctrine. By when you read the suttas, it's like, everything changes to where like your body is golden and glowing, and you're floating, and like the stuff is so over the top that it seems like it's a completely different excuse me, a completely
Mhm.
different order of experience than anything. And that's why we have such a thing where in a lot of Buddhist traditions, it's like, well, no, you can't possibly get there in this life.
mm,
It's got to be 10,000 more lifetimes, because you still have a physical body and you still eat and poop. Like, it's like, no, it can't possibly be related to this existence.
mm,
And I think it's that kind of mentality that even if we're not specifically coming from a Buddhist tradition or a Hindu tradition or something where you have these ideas, it's still kind of like in the collective psyche that there is something so exalted and strange about it that
Yes.
yeah.
a mother can't possibly have that.
Yes.
It is that plus one game that we keep doing. So everything you say that you experience, I add my experiences on top of what I perceive your experiences are. So whatever I'm experiencing is already there, but I'm adding what I think you're saying on top of what I'm already experiencing, which means that it is the plus one game.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And
And getting the oh,
no, I was just saying, and it's fed by so many different sources that we don't even
Yeah.
recognize. It's not even like there's just one bad actor out there who's intentionally trying to make us feel like we haven't gotten the thing, but it's just so ingrained from so many different sources
Mm.
that we don't even notice that we're like swimming in that bias.
And I just want to say that because we are really emphasizing that at the moment, that it just creates that very vulnerable state where people, are so susceptible to charlatans
Yeah,
out there, fake gurus out there that say, but I am, and I already have seen, and I can see in you, you're so close.
yeah,
Just, come to the next retreat, or follow me, or move into my ashram, or whatever, and then you will feel it, then you will feel it. So people, they believe that is true, that there is something else than what is here right now. Um, and yeah, and it's so easy seduced.
yeah,
Yeah.
then there's the added component of that, I think, where when something is first realized or seen through, or you have an insight, that there can be like moments of shock and awe, and
hmm
then people mistake that reaction as being the realization.
Yeah.
Even like when I when whatever all this was the past couple of days that sort of like clicked into place for me, like that moment was so exuberant that I like picked up a pen and wrote a poem, which I've never before in my life done. And then that shock and awe it fades away every single time. It fades away, and you are like adjusting to a new normal. At least in my experience, it's not like every moment of every day I'm in shock and awe. Like things certainly are better than they were a few years ago, of course, but it's not that same like mind-blowing moment over and over and over again.
Yeah.
Mm,
Yeah.
yeah.
Absolutely. That's
And
great.
like you wrote to Hannah that that is completely normal in a lot of the old traditions that
Yeah.
that when you come to a realization and you are in that shock and awe, you write a poem.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
write a poem.
Yes.
It's
Yeah. So
uh,
we have a lot, and I also think that is also adding to what we just talked about, that if you only read poems from when people are in that shock and awe state, then it seems like,
Yes.
oh
no,
wow,
no,
I have not experienced that 24/7 for the last, 30 years.
no.
So it can't be it. It can't be it. But that is just what happens when you are in that shock and awe state. You write a poem about
Exactly.
and
Yeah.
yeah. But reality obviously is different when you snap out of the shock and awe.
Yeah.
Mm.
Um, sorry, I'm writing something
Thank
down because you spurred something for me. But I have just a few other random things that seemed like maybe would be helpful, or I mean, maybe not, but they're the things that, like in hindsight, um, mistake. I well, they're not mistakes. They're
you.
just things that the mind does that can be very distracting. Um, so last time when you asked me about being on the fifth floor, and it was like I couldn't find words for what I wanted to say, and this isn't actually directly about the fifth floor, but what it spurred for me was that, again, my brain is super hyper literal, and so with other teachers in the past, I had heard these sort of um like the guidance around things like, stepping back or pulling yourself back, like you're in a theater, or falling back. And for me, at least, I'm sure that this works for a lot of other people, but if you are like me and are hyper literal, what that ended up creating was like this sense of these sensations in the back of my head that were like actually creating like distance from experience.
Mm.
And so something that became really important for me over time, was like when it's actually kind of like what you said with the unpinning, is when I would notice that start to happen, it I would then sort of if instead I would try and fill up all the space. So if I noticed I was trying to pull back, the sort of antidote for me at least was really like, okay, let's actually fill up. Can I, feel the whole body? Can I feel the space around me? And doing that sort of unpinning thing. And so with the fifth floor, if anyone is hyper literal and is like literally like doing something like I was doing, where I was like creating a different thing somewhere else watching, um, that's that's probably not what is intended. And
No,
there's
no.
it's like it is. Yeah, sorry, you go for it.
No, it's the intention with when I talk about the fifth floor, it's that be having that anthropologic overview. Like if you're standing in a maze and you're in the middle of the maze, you can only see a hedge and a hedge and a hedge. You can't see anything. But if you get up into a tower, fifth floor tower, and you look down, you can see the maze from above. And you can see, okay, that is the way out. And it's having that objective anthropological attitude towards it. So it's not about I can't find my way out, I can't find my way out, but it's just like, okay, calm down, look at it from above, and being completely anthropologic about it. So there's no emotions and there's no I and there's no anything. It's just observing, observing, observing. And then you get that overview because you are like detached from it emotionally or
Yeah.
so you can just get that overview as if it was somebody else that is standing with an issue, that you're always so wise when it comes to other people, so you can always look at the issue from an angle where you're not involved in it on that personal level.
And I'm
Yes,
curious
so
because
do that, and not a literal creation of a thing that's watching from somewhere else.
yeah, well, I was curious too because we've talked about you having aphantasia, and like I know in my experience, because I am very visually, like mentally visual, um, there can actually be an experience of almost having like the what we take to be the okay. So say there would be a mental thought about whether to um, go to uh, I don't know. I'm really not coming up with a clear choice here. Should we eat or go to the gym? And there will be like this is a terrible metaphor. I'm sorry. There's like there'll be like a mental image of each, and if there's like an identification with one, like eating, there'll be a feeling in the body of like pulling to eat, and there's like a thought of what it would be like to eat, and all of that kind of takes up the larger part of the visual space and the felt space, because it feels like there is some attachment to that, and having that fifth floor view where it's like stepping up away from it, in at least in my experience, the visual experience of it and the physical experience, that identified kind of feeling of that thought actually seems to get
Mm.
pushed down. Like there's actually a movement away from it where there's this like metacognition that sees that that is one possible option, that there are sensations there, that there are visual images there, and there is a distance where instead of being the thought, you suddenly recognize that there is something else that is separate from the visual image and the sensations in the body and the ideas of hunger in general, and that all of that, and then you can start to see the gym, and that can be another one, and you can view them both with that same kind of detached perspective where each one is equally non-identified as that, and so I don't know how it shows up for you. I think it's different for everybody, but for me, there is actually a visual component that almost
But
seems
that
like that whoop,
and
zoning
it's
out.
exactly my own experience as well with that feeling of the maze, that I can, when I have been in situation in my life where I have felt powerless or overwhelmed or anything like that, that it helps having that inner visual image of me getting out of the maze and seeing things from above, so I can find my way out of the maze or find my way out of the situation where I'm no longer in the middle of it. But I do think that with aphantasia, what we're sitting and talking about right now, we might as well speak Chinese, because you don't see
That
those
is
images.
so What you're describing is so bizarre. I cannot imagine what it is like to
It,
We
have
we
it,
we
it,
have
it's
visual
the
we have we
thoughts.
have small
it,
movies in
it,
our
it's
heads. Yeah.
it's the
Yeah,
magical
that
apple,
is
it's the
so
magical apple
weird.
pie.
But you know what? Like, well, so one, if you have visual thoughts, just listen to them. Don't listen to me. I do not have visual thoughts. I don't know what that is like.
No, but
Um,
actually, Hannah, I want to say that we have a lot of people with aphantasia
Yeah,
in our community, and a lot of people
yes.
with aphantasia are watching the videos. So I think what you're pointing to as a person with aphantasia, I think it's super relevant
yeah,
for other people with aphantasia, because they are a lot of times don't understand, what we are pointing
yeah.
to, because we're using metaphors for
Eh,
experiences.
yeah, and we do tend, because we're visual people, that tends to be just sort of the default way of explaining experience.
Yeah. So I
Um,
think it's helpful what you're pointing to.
That then there's one other thing I'll say that I shared on Discord a long time ago that some people found helpful, but I doubt newcomers are scrolling back. So a turning point for me, maybe a year, I don't know, it doesn't matter when. So because I don't have visual thoughts, it felt like there was some sort of like 3D program in the background that was trying to hold all of the sensations like where they should be in the body, but it wasn't something I could see. It was just like I could kind of feel that tension. And so, like, say that I was doing a body scan and they would, okay, feel your feet. It was this really weird thing of like, it felt like there was this tension in the body trying to hold the sensations in where the feet would be, and then there's like me trying to now go in, and it was just like creating all of these pieces and a lot of effort. And so I it was, I can't remember, maybe it was an Angelo body scan meditation where it was the first time I heard someone say like, just let the sensations be wherever they are. Like he's still talking about the body, but just let them be wherever they are. And that sort of helped me
Mm.
see through whatever that construct was, because then it sort of gave me that permission of, oh, you don't really have to have the sensation in the feet to know what he's talking about. So that kind of got rid of the body map. And then what started to come online then, or became really clear, was that like the meditation was just happening on its own. So for a while there would be this like kind of back and forth of, well, the mind trying to follow the directions, but also seeing that it's just happening on its own. And then so like slowly over time being more and more, it's happening on its own and less of the mind doing it. And then getting that trust of it in meditation then helped it for me translate into daily life of just relaxing and letting things just be moving on their own, and knowing that the response is naturally going to happen to whatever the causes and conditions are.
Mm. Yeah, I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's good. I'm gonna incorporate that.
Yeah.
It's a really good pointing. Thank you.
So I wrote something down about parenting, but honestly, this is such a big topic that I actually don't know that I have much helpful to say on it in this moment, other than I just want to acknowledge that like this is hard with all relationships, but man, with parenting, because like you got your own shit from your relationship with your parents, and then you're also trying to raise your kids right, and depending on what sort of conditioning or trauma you have from your parents and how that impacts your kids. And then there's, especially in the US, the messages around what parenting, particularly mothering, should be like, that like there are some of these messages that mothering, it should be the thing that gives you the greatest joy in life. It's the thing that really gives you your identity. And so there just can be so much built up around parenting that I think it can be very hard to see through. And it was for me, because there was so many things that there's so many ways in which the process of awakening is like the opposite of what we are,
Yeah,
at least in this country, like what we are told about
absolutely.
parenting. And there can be so much like morality or trauma wrapped up in that. And I just, yeah, I just want to reassure people, I guess, that some of the things that we can say about parenting, that like it's all out of your control, and you can't fix anyone's suffering, and like those things are very scary for the mind. And it can, for me, it had this sense of like, of just like, I will no, I have to hold on to this because I have to make sure that like my kids turn out okay. But I do want to reassure people that it's so much better, at least has been so much better for me this way. But the way that it is sounds very like the opposite of what being a good parent means.
Mm.
And so it's really hard to talk about, I guess. And maybe is something that, if people on Discord are having thoughts or questions or feelings, there's a Discord channel where
Yeah.
there's lots of people in our group who have kids of all ages. And so there's lots of people there to help talk about it and support people through it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really, really good. Also because I remember when that's almost like 2 years ago now, where I had a conversation with Yahara, where I said that but no matter what you do, your children will end up in therapy. And she was so distraught by that because here she is trying to do everything so they won't end up in therapy. But it's just
Yes.
what bless you. Whatever we see as important, the way that I raised my children was very much opposite of how I was raised. I was like raised by wolves. So it was very much like the way that I was a parent was very engaging and very, you know, um yeah, put everything in my life was just about my two kids and about, being there and doing things together and having experiences and all that. And because I never had that as a child. So which means that my children now have the feeling that they was a bit smothered. They really didn't have any space on their own, and going to therapy for the exact opposite of what I went to therapy for.
Yes.
And it's like that. It's just acknowledging that going to therapy is great because we have that idea of the way that um of the traumas that we experienced as children was huge because the opposite would have been better. But then we become parents and do the opposite, and our children, they end up in therapy for not having been raised the way you were raised. So it's like it's for ongoing, and
Yes.
it just goes to show that the best we can do with our kids is be authentic about ourselves and be authentic with our children, and whatever experience they have, it's valid. Whatever they are experiencing, that is valid. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Yes. That spurred me for something that was such a big realization for me a year or two ago, which was that I realized that like, because I so badly wanted to be a good parent. And so keep in mind, when I say 2 years ago, my kids were like, 2.5, 3, like they were toddlers. But I so badly wanted to be a good parent that, when things would come up, and then, whatever, they would be like, "You're mean, I don't like you." I found that I was arguing with them to try and prove to them, like, "Don't you see that I am a good parent?" And like, that is so absurd,
Yes.
and
Yeah.
yeah, just that, like, you
Really.
cannot control their experience, and no matter what, like you said, there's probably going to need to be therapy involved, and it's great. That's just part of
No,
being
but
of being
but
human. Like, it's not
yeah,
all
exactly.
the
And
parents' responsibility.
no, exactly. And also really acknowledge that whatever they experience is valid. When they say,
Yes.
"You're so mean, you're such a bad mom," that is what they experience. And you can go, "Yeah, I can completely see that. I completely get that. You want ice cream for breakfast. I completely see I'm a vicious, cruel mom that is not allowing you to have ice cream for breakfast. I get it. I get it. Here's your cereal. It's
Yes.
that really truly acknowledge their experience because they don't have perspective yet. They will get perspective when they have kids, but not sooner. So right now they're 3, 5, 7, 12 years old. You can only acknowledge their experience, that what they're experiencing, that is absolutely how it is.
And I like had so much repressed rage
Mm.
because well, really what it was is that I was not just like holding boundaries, and instead I would get into these situations of trying to negotiate with them, or just like trying to convince them to act the way I wanted them to act, because then I wouldn't have to hold a boundary and it would be easier and I would be a good parent, and just on and on and on. And yeah, then like really having to see that that rage or frustration is about
Yes.
me not holding the boundaries, and like it's not at all feelings about them, it's feelings about the discomfort with my own behavior, or when I am in cognitive dissonance, right?
Yes.
Like,
Absolutely.
yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it's about you feeling that you need to justify or apologize for having a boundary, for having, the wish of your children not having ice cream for breakfast. That okay, it is how it is in this household. You're not having ice cream for breakfast. And having that completely okayness with, but that's how it is in this family. You don't need to
Mhm.
apologize. They don't need to understand about sugar levels and insulin release and all of that. They don't need to know any of that. It's just how it is in this household. But
Yeah,
that's
it's
about
so
that's
it's
that's about you being okay with your boundaries.
yeah, it's so simple.
Yeah.
It really is. It's so simple, but you got to get through all of your
Yeah.
bullshit backpack, as you say, before you can see how simple it is.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think that's pretty much it for
Okay.
my list of things. Oh no, wait, actually there was one more thing. And
Mhm.
and then I'll be quiet. I sort of over the past like 6 to 12 months have really started to see with like certain teachers or guides or books or whatever, like that, the body yes and the body no, and really starting to see where certain things resonate with me. And I just wanted to share this in case it's helpful for anyone else who's out there in this wild marketplace of
Yeah.
non-duality and spirituality and awakening. For me, the teachers that I resonate with and have been most helpful, which includes you, um, it's
Thank
are
you.
are like really only doing two things in my understanding, which is these are the teachers who are, one, always pointing you back to your own experience and like reiterating that this is already here for you. So trust your own intuition. And then two, have, skillful means and guidance around identifying delusion and, being with your experience and working with trauma. And so really those teachers, they're not adding anything to your experience. They are only pointing you to your experience and helping you like see through the unnecessary extras. So they're not the teachers, again, this is just my experience, but they're not the teachers that are telling you how you need to interpret and feel about things, new beliefs that you want to have, um, the map of where you're going and what it means, and just like, yeah, they're not adding all of that on
Mhm.
to you. So if folks are like feeling overwhelmed or hearing messages that like feel wrong or icky, I would really look at that and see like what is it that they're doing. Are they pointing you to your own experience, or are they helping you navigate delusion and trauma, or are they trying to tell you how it is and tell you why they know more and better than you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
So important.
that
Well,
was, yeah,
no.
my
Yeah.
last PSA.
Thank
Yeah.
you for
Yeah.
that.
So
Yeah.
important.
I think that's a really, really concise checklist, and
Yeah.
it's really well said, well framed. Because I
Yeah.
agree
Yeah.
completely
I
with that.
absolutely agree with that. Really, really agree with that point of when somebody is trying to tell you how you feel,
Hmm.
run.
Yeah.
You you should be supported, and just like we talked about with raising children, they should be supported in their experience. It is okay to be super frustrated that you can't have ice cream. It is okay to be super sad about your childhood trauma. It is okay to have all of those things coming up. All that is okay. Having anybody telling you that it shouldn't be like that, and you are, enlightened or awake, so you don't have that anymore. You don't feel like that anymore.
Mm,
That is just gaslighting, and you should get as far away from that as possible.
yeah.
Yeah. A bit funny
Yeah.
that I'm sitting saying what you should do when I'm just saying you shouldn't do anything that people tell you what to
I
do.
yes, yes, I know.
But
Yeah,
yeah,
it's
but yeah,
just
it's a really good checklist. It's a really good checklist
Yeah.
that if you're supported in your experience and in your own looking into your own direct
Yeah.
experience and looking at all the obstacles there is in looking at your own direct experience, if you're supported in that, it is a safe way to go.
Yeah. Because ultimately, the whole thing is that it's never something that we get to by belief or by
Yeah.
learning new information or taking on something new. It's always just investigate your own experience. Like it's clearly has to be here.
mm,
It's an available experience. It is something that we already have available. We just need to be able to know where to look or know what is obscuring it from view.
Mm.
And so exactly, it's I think it's even like, we I think we try to do this enough, but even to really make people aware that the fetters aren't a real thing,
Mm.
that even that isn't something that you're taking on as like a belief or a guiding framework in life. Like it's just one way of delineating certain experiences that include types of identification and then ways to see through those types of identification
Mm.
and recognizing that everything is different for everybody. It really has to be um, unique because we have incredible similarities between all of us. Like there are some things that are shockingly relevant kind of across the board, but we are all very unique with all of our own all of our own past experiences and biologies and all of that. And so every path has to be adaptable and relevant to the person who's
Mm.
doing it.
Yeah.
I really appreciate how you emphasize that the fetters are not like a linear ladder. I think that's really important and true. And um, like I have revisited lessons and exercises and videos so many times
Mm.
because it yeah, like you say, it just each time you're coming from a different
Yeah.
starting place, and so it hits differently and you see different things. And so really do encourage folks of like, don't try and treat it like it's linear. Like I would do all the exercises, but then I would still go on to the next lessons, even if it wasn't like, oh, check the box. Did I
Yeah.
break that fetter? I just didn't have that mindset of it. I worked with it until it felt right, and then would keep going, and then circle back again when things felt relevant again. So, yeah,
I'm
just
I'm 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 really
reinforcing what Todd and Pernilla say.
Thank
yeah,
you.
I'm really happy that you're emphasizing that because you have passed all 10 fetters and you still work a lot with the second fetter, and then you go back to the
Yeah.
third fetter, and then you look into the fourth fetter. It's never anything that is a done deal. I'm done with it. I have heard it because you are a different entity now. You will hear different things. Even people after listening to this talk, they can go back to a lesson that they heard yesterday, and they will hear something different because they have just picked up on something. New seeds have been planted, which means that something new will emerge, something new will come forward. And that is the beauty of the feathers, that there's always more to look into. There's always a new twist on the kaleidoscope, and you have never listened to a lesson even when you have just finished it.
Mm.
I know that they're not real, but the second fetter is like my favorite. If you can have a favorite not real fetter, just because those lessons for me are so powerful, because it's so easy to miss
Yeah,
like what your toxic starting point is.
yeah,
And yeah, the gift that keeps on giving, I
yeah,
think.
absolutely. Thank you. Thank you. I'm really happy you're emphasizing that.
Yeah.
It's not a checklist.
No.
It's not a checklist. I was thinking, would you be up for, now time is passing and it's going to be Christmas and New Year and spring and all of that, that whenever you feel ready for making a part 3, that we're going to make a part 3 and see where you're at. So you
Yeah.
know, write down things that comes up, and then whenever you feel that now it's time to make a new video, then we sit down and do the next episode.
Yeah, that sounds great. It's interesting. My sort of first awakening was November 2 years ago, and then November last year, I had a pretty big change or insight or experience, and now here we are again. And I know this is just totally coincidence, like there's not even time, but it is still on the relative level. It's been kind of funny, the like
Yeah.
That really is.
the November for some reason is like a powerful month for me, I guess.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
That's super
It
interesting.
is.
So if not before, then see you in November 25.
Yeah. Oh, I will definitely see you before then, and I'm looking forward to the retreats next year.
Yeah.
Thank you for
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
us
Yeah.
too.
So are we.
Us too.
So are we. Super excited about that.
Yeah.
That was so good speaking with you, Hannah. Really, really
Yeah,
enjoyed that.
thank you.
Yeah. Thank you so
Well,
much.
actually, sorry, can I ask one question that I almost
Yes.
forgot about?
Absolutely.
We can leave it on recording or not recording. It's fine for people to hear it. One thing that I am still getting used to with the sort of impersonal thing, and maybe I just need more time with it, but like the other night, there was this, moment of, well, my daughter was being really intense. Like it was a very unique moment where we were like laughing, but she was like grabbing my face and looking directly into my eyes. And I normally don't really do eye contact. And so it was just like it was like a strange moment where if I would say what the energy moving through the house was, it kind of felt like everyone was like, hi, I don't know. It was just like everyone was being weird and silly and over the top, but it was like, it was almost this sense of like feeling like I was getting sucked into her,
Yeah.
and the best way I could say it. And then like I could feel the mind trying to like pull back and like create like an inner world that was
Mm.
like, well, it was trying, it didn't quite work, but that's what it felt like. Like I was like trying to kind of make something to pull back, to be like, I'm not this. Is that something that just
I completely
you get
understand.
used to, or
No, I completely understand that merging, that dissolving of boundary that is happening, that will just keep evolving, like what we talk in the sixth feather with subject object, or I am here, you are there. That complete dissolving is just going to be more and more apparent, because the idea that we have with a boundary, it's so arbitrary. It's just the brain that is doing that. There are no boundaries. Like if you feel your bum in the seat right now, it's different to feel where the bum ends and the seat starts. It's just like Angelo say, sensations, just happening in space, because there is no boundaries. If you close your eyes, your body completely dissolves. There's no boundaries to it. It's just something that the mind is creating. And when we experience that with another being, it can also, a lot of people have it first with animals,
Mm.
that because it's like the threat of the ego, or of the mind trying to make sense of things. It's not, it doesn't feel that vulnerable when it's with an animal,
Yeah.
but it can be that completely, like horseback riders, that they experience that they're one with the horse. It's their legs that are moving when they're galloping with the horse. They are the horse. It's just like one unity that is moving together. Or like you had
Yeah,
with Murphy, lying looking into Murphy's eye.
Yeah.
Murphy is a dog.
Yeah.
Um,
Golden retriever.
wonderful goal. Lying and morphing,
Murphing.
morphing with
Murphing,
Murphy.
cute. You're
I
murphing.
was Murphing.
I
um,
like that.
so I think what you experience is just the beginning of a lot of experiences that are closer to what reality actually is, not what we perceive as reality with our eyes opened, where it's like a scene in a movie or something like that. It's that more that reality that is with our eyes closed, where there's just movement of everything. And that I have had the same with my kids. Um, that completely, I am them, it's my eyes blinking. It's like a mirror that
Yeah.
yeah, it's really difficult to explain, but it's that morphing with another being, where I am them and that's my
Yeah.
food. We have also had that lying in the hammock
Yeah.
a lots of times, where it's really that completely body intertwined, that suddenly I can look at touch foot and I can feel my foot being there. So it's that complete dissolving of boundaries. I think you're just the mind is beginning to release of those skeletons, if you can say it like that, of
Yeah.
that distinction between two beings.
Yeah, all that this is helpful. Thank you. And this is something I'll be looking at then over time, because it's a somewhat new experience with other people. Like it's had it with space and like objects, I guess. Not really objects, but there was something like, I think because I already don't usually make eye contact,
Mm.
like it's not weird. It wasn't weird for me when it was just like being in the same space as people, but there's something in me that was like, with that really intense direct eye contact, that was like trying to pull away. So that's, I'm gonna look at that more
Mm.
carefully over the coming weeks and months. But yeah, that was super helpful. So thank you.
Yeah, of course.
Just curious, does it feel like there's like a risk of overwhelm in that kind of situation? Like you're gonna be somehow overtaken or dissolved, or is it
Yeah,
that
but
kind of
I don't.
thing?
I'm yeah, yes, and I think it's like keying on to this piece of like, I still need to be the responsible one,
Mm.
keeping my kids safe. Because like the dissolving in other situations has been quite like pleasant. Like it honestly is like kind of fun and enjoyable, and but it's something about that particular moment. Yeah, so maybe it is some sort of overwhelm, but like, man, she was wild, and it was supposed to be bedtime, and it was past bedtime, and like, yeah, so this sense of like, oh, I'm gonna get sucked into this, but I'm supposed to be doing parenting right now. Like,
Mhm.
can't merge with her too much, because then who's gonna put the kids to bed, I guess. But I think I just need to get comfortable with it.
Yeah, and also really rely in that fetter flow where your nervous system and your experiences and your years on the planet has given you a different flow than she has, because she is recently born, you know?
Yeah.
She is
Yes.
very young.
Yeah.
So
Yes.
she
Yeah.
doesn't have the concept of time the same way that you do. And you can completely morph with her, and you can completely be in the moment, and then there will be a natural ninth feather flow, brushing teeth and pajamas and bedtime and stories and snuggles, and that that will automatically take place in you, because there's so many programs running in the background where you know the position of the moon and the amount of time until sun rises and all of that is in the mix, and you have years and years and years and years and years of experiences with when it's nighttime, you brush your teeth, take your pajamas on, and go to bed. So that will take over. You don't need to control that. That is kind of like, a reflex that is just happening. So there's also a lot of parenting that can relax and rely on causes and conditions, that you will automatically do those responsible adult things because you have so many years of experiences with it, that it will just, you cannot be de-biked. You will always know how to ride a
Yes.
bike. And when it's nighttime, you will brush your teeth and go to bed eventually. So it's also that really trusting on the nine feather flow that it will happen. You can morph with her for 2 minutes, teeth will still be brushed, and she will still be in bed.
Thank you. This is, yeah, very, very much what I needed to hear, and I'll report back in a couple months.
Yeah, that'd be
Forward to
great.
that.
It was so wonderful speaking with you again.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
thank you.
Thank you for being up
I
with this.
really enjoyed it too.
Yeah.
Thank you
Thank you
so
so much.
much.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.